There's something powerful and alluring about a train. A gigantic machine that crosses the landscape on a steel rail, shaking the ground and making a rumbling noise that announces its immense presence. If the wind is right, you can hear it from many miles away. They are incredibly powerful and can pull a string of cars nearly 4 miles long from end to end. There's been nothing quite like it in the history of the world. But the story of how these giants came to Indiana began long before the first rail was ever laid. Before trains, the only way to get to Indiana was by wagons or boats. If going by wagon, you were limited by how very few roads there were. And if you wanted to go somewhere else, you'd have to go on foot or navigate rough terrain with a horse. You could go by boat, but you were limited by where the rivers flowed, and sometimes whether there had been enough rain. Indiana invested in canals so goods and people could travel to specific places. But it took an immense amount of work to dig these with shovels when modern equipment didn't exist. Not to mention, they were prone to get leaks and let all the water out when muskrats burrowed into the sides. And on top of that, it was a very slow way to move people and things across country. But trains were different. All you needed was to lay down steel rails to anywhere you wanted a train to go, and these would virtually last forever with very little maintenance. Not only could an immense amount of freight travel across country, it could also transport tons and tons of people. However, there were obstacles. In southern Indiana, large hills made of limestone made it harder for trains to travel. Steep inclines required more fuel and travel time. The solution? Build tunnels. And at Tunnelton, they made a very long tunnel, 1,731 feet long. After completion, they had to hire a night watchman, as the vacuum and force of the trains would dislodge rock from the ceiling. These rocks would fall upon the tracks, potentially causing a train to derail. So after each and every train went through the tunnel, a railroad employee would walk from end to end, removing rocks as he found them. This hazard was eliminated by lining the tunnel with brick. Tunnelton's big tunnel is big and curved, and you cannot see from end to end. In the middle, it gets pretty dark and spooky, and there have long been stories of it being haunted. I actually caught something on film. But is it the ghostly lantern of a long-dead night watchman? You be the judge. But even bigger than the big tunnel is the Duncan Tunnel at Georgetown. It's the longest in Indiana at 4,295 feet long. It disappears at Georgetown and goes underneath Highway 64, emerging at Edwardsville. There have long been rumors of an underground government facility in the center, where things are unloaded on a dock to a massive warehouse. No one really knows, as both ends have cameras, and police show up if you get too close. Inside Clifty Falls State Park, 2 tunnels were dug for trains to pass through the rocky landscape, but were abandoned after a great deal of money was spent. One was completely sealed and no longer accessible, but the other one is still there as a park attraction. It does get pretty muddy in the center, but provides a great adventure. Sometimes trains had another obstacle, very deep valleys, such as here at Bloomfield, Indiana. When completed in 1906, the Tulip Viaduct was the longest rail trestle in the United States and the third longest in the entire world, a whopping 2,295 feet. It looks big at a distance, but gigantic up close. And in a time before highways, fast cars, and airplanes, they were a portal to the rest of the world. Once upon a time, train depots were pretty exciting places. Letters and packages would arrive from across the country, way before the days of Amazon. And yes, people got just as excited. At the depot, you'd pick up family and friends, and there were many happy memories. Or you could buy a ticket and disappear to a place you'd never seen before. Something about that was very romantic and exciting, and it still is today. The old depot at Jasper now runs a dinner train where you can travel across Indiana for a few hours and get some good food. At the depot in Seymour, the Reno gang boarded a train in 1866. When it got to Marshfield, they conducted the first train robbery in U.S. history, getting away with an immense amount of money, and it wouldn't be the last. Railways were transporting the wealth of America, and places like Bedford were able to transport limestone across country. And some of these depots got really fancy, such as this one at downtown Bedford. Many of these fine depots still stand today, but they are used for other things, such as businesses. But some are now preserved as museums, where you can learn about train travel of the past, such as this one at Madison. Inside is train memorabilia. There's a model of Madison's rail line, including the steepest standard gauge railroad incline in North America, climbing 413 feet over 7,012 feet. It was used from 1841 to 1992. And a short walk away, a caboose that you can tour. One of the finest railroad museums in Indiana is at Elkhart, the National New York Central Railway Museum. You can see dining cars, and so many relics of the past. Even a train made out of 50 pounds of toothpicks. There's a place for kids to play, and for adults to marvel at what used to be. But both can agree on the model train exhibit. Outside are 2 rows of trains that you can explore at your leisure. Don't miss this beautiful depot as you leave town. Another great train museum is the Monon Connection at Monon, Indiana. Trains and train memorabilia starting at the parking lot. And inside, many fine displays. One of my favorite train museums is at Salem, Indiana. It's a replica of the one burned by Confederate soldiers in 1863. On the outside, it has a caboose. And on the inside, many Monon artifacts. But in the basement is the star attraction, the largest model train exhibit in Indiana. The town of Salem is replicated in miniature. It is pretty awesome. Inside the French Lick West Baden Museum is something very extraordinary. Not just a Monon train exhibit, but an enormous model train diorama. This is an exact replica of the train used by the Hagenbeck Wallace Circus. In its heyday, the train brought animals and performers to town each year. Along the Ohio River at Evansville is the Amtrak Transportation Museum, made from the old train depot. There is a model train exhibit featuring downtown Evansville. And a train outside that you can tour. These are not the only train museums in Indiana, but they are the ones that are open the most. But some people want more than just a museum, they want an experience. There was a time when trains brought rich people, presidents, and even gangsters to West Baden and French Lick every single day. Today you can still experience some of that bygone era by taking a ride on the French Lick Scenic Railway. Buy your tickets online and pick them up at the old depot. You can choose from a variety of different train car experiences. But I must say, the one with air conditioning and cushioned seats is my favorite. These tours travel across the southern Indiana landscape and are very popular in the summer and especially the fall when the leaves change colors. At Christmas they have a special tour that stops at a Christmas village. It also goes through one of the longest train tunnels in Indiana. Another popular tour starts at Connorsville, the Whitewater Valley Railway. This scenic tour travels to historic Metamora, where they let you out at the town for a few hours and then return. They also have a special Christmas time tour as well. One of the more unique train rides is at Nineveh, the Indiana Light Steamers. Established in 1957, it's a small gauge train track that provides rides in the summer. Notice my foot on the track. And if you're already enjoying the Holiday World theme park at Santa Claus, know that they have a small train there as well. It goes through a land of fairy tales. But even the most wonderful fairy tale has an ending. Trains still move across the Indiana landscape, but not like they used to. In the past, they stopped at small towns like Mitchell, and big names entertained at the Mitchell Opera House. Trains brought dignitaries and presidents to places like Bedford, where the Greystone Luxury Hotel wowed visitors. But the railway that once went through town is now gone. This was taken a few years ago. It's now covered with asphalt and virtually forgotten. The Big 4 Railroad Bridge at Jeffersonville is now a pedestrian walkway, taking visitors from Indiana to Kentucky and back. Forgotten is the castle-like ruin at Clarksville, where prisoners were unloaded from the train to a holding area before being transported to the penitentiary. The Monon Line, that still existed at Salem just a few years ago, is now a walking trail. The Milwaukee Trail goes from Bedford to Williams. Some say it's progress, others miss what used to be here and see a missed opportunity. Even with the old railroad tracks disappearing, there's talk of installing high-speed passenger train lines, connecting major cities to travelers and workers that don't want to move from where they live. Perhaps trains aren't just a thing of the past, but a glimpse of the future to come. Maybe it's just further down the line.